Strange tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Strange Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you two short stories. The first story is titled Zhou Kechang. In the Zhai region, there was a scholar named Zhou, over 50 years old, with only one son, Zhou Kechang. He doted on this son like no other. By the time Zhou Kechang was around 13 or 14, he was handsome and charming, but unfortunately, he didn't like studying. Every day, he either skipped school or played around with a group of other kids, often refusing to even come home. Zhou turned a blind eye to it all and let him get away with it. One day, Zhou Kechang didn't come home by the time it got dark. The family became frantic and searched everywhere, but couldn't find him. Zhou and his wife were so distressed that they cried out in desperation, as if their souls had left their bodies. Over a year later, Zhou Kechang suddenly returned. When he walked through the door, he said, "I was taken by a Taoist, but luckily, I wasn't harmed. I managed to escape while he was out." Zhou, hearing this, was overwhelmed with emotion and cried tears of joy, not bothering to ask for the details, just happy that his son was back. But something strange had happened. After his return, Zhou Kechang had become much smarter, his studies improving rapidly, and his writing was exceptional. A year later, he took the county school exam and rose to fame in one stroke, becoming a widely praised scholar in the area. The wealthy families in the area were eager to form connections with the Zhou family, hoping to marry off their daughters to him, but Zhou Kechang turned them all down. Later, Zhao Jinshi's daughter, who was graceful and beautiful, caught attention. Regardless of whether his son was willing or not, Zhou insisted on marrying her to him. After the wedding, the couple got along well, laughing and talking together. However, strangely enough, Zhou Kechang never shared a bed with his wife. They slept in separate rooms, never once sleeping together. A year later, Zhou Kechang passed another exam and became a Jinshi, bringing even more joy to his father. But as Zhou grew older, his only wish was to see his son become a father himself. So, he began to gently hint and ask, but Zhou Kechang remained indifferent, as if he didn't understand the ways of men and women. His mother, unable to bear it any longer, began nagging him, hoping he would soon wake up. One day, Zhou Kechang suddenly changed his demeanor. He stormed out of the house, saying in a cold voice, "I've wanted to leave for a long time, but out of respect for you, I've stayed. I just can't make my wife pregnant to fulfill your expectations. Let me go, soon someone else will take my place." His mother was terrified and rushed after him, grabbing the corner of his clothes. But before she could hold him back, Zhou Kechang suddenly fell backward, landing on the ground with a thud. When his family rushed to him, all they found were his clothes and hat, but he had completely disappeared, as if he had vanished into thin air. His mother turned pale with fear and, after a moment of shock, broke down in tears, believing her son was dead and that the person who had been in the house all this time was just his spirit. The family was left in mourning, their hearts heavy with grief. The next day, the Zhou family was still deep in their sorrow when suddenly, the sound of horses' hooves came from outside the courtyard. Then, a familiar figure appeared, riding a horse and followed by attendants, walking straight into the Zhou household. When Zhou Tianyi and his wife looked closely, they saw it was their son, Zhou Kechang. The whole family was shocked and fearful. They cautiously approached him and asked, "What happened? Where have you been?" Zhou Kechang replied, "I was kidnapped by some bad people and sold to a rich merchant. He didn't have any children, so he raised me as his own. But later, he had a son, and I figured it was time for me to go back to the Zhou family. He agreed and sent me home." When they asked about his studies, they found that he was still the same as before, completely uninterested in literature. That's when Zhou Tianyi and his wife realized what had happened. The real Zhou Kechang had returned, while the one who had passed the exams and gained fame was nothing more than a ghost in disguise. This strange story never spread beyond the family, and the Zhou household was content to pretend they didn't know what had really happened. The real Zhou Kechang took over the title of Jinsher and continued living his life. When Zhou Kechang entered the inner room, his wife, seeing him return, rushed to greet him with joy, calling his name affectionately. But Zhou Kechang became awkward and flustered, his face turning bright red, like a newlywed groom. Not long after, Zhou Kechang's wife gave birth to a big, bouncing baby boy. At the end of the story, the author added a commentary. He said, "The ancients often said that people who are truly fortunate tend to have a certain innocence in their appearance, something in their nose, mouth, and eyes that shows sincerity and simplicity. This is the kind of person to whom fortune naturally comes. On the other hand, those who are too clever, always scheming and calculating, even the spirits and ghosts avoid them. Simple-hearted people can achieve success and fame without having to go through the formal exams, and beautiful wives can come to them without the need for a formal marriage ceremony. What's more, those who have little to rely on and yet still scheme and struggle, what will become of them?" The second story is titled, The Thief's Household. During the reign of Emperor Xuanji, in the areas around Tang and Yi counties, 7 out of every 10 people were thieves. The number was so large that the authorities didn't even dare to arrest them. Eventually, these thieves were pardoned, and the county office coined a special term for them, the thief's household. Whenever a thief household had a dispute with an ordinary citizen, the authorities would often side with the thieves, fearing they might band together and rebel against the government. So, whenever someone came to file a complaint, they would pretend to be from a thief household, while the original enemy would desperately try to prove that the other party wasn't from a thief household. Every time a petition was brought to the county office, no matter the truth of the matter, the officials had to first determine who was from a thief household. To do this, they had to go through the official records and verify the documents. Coincidentally, a fox spirit lived in the county office, and the daughter of the county magistrate had been bewitched by it. The magistrate, feeling helpless, called for a wizard to perform an exorcism. The wizard used talismans to trap the fox spirit and put it in a bottle, intending to burn it. However, while in the bottle, the fox spirit shouted, "I belong to a thief's household." Everyone present couldn't help but burst out laughing. At the end of the story, the author added a commentary. Nowadays, many people who openly rob and steal from others are not considered thieves by the authorities, but rather classified as sexual offenders. Meanwhile, those burglars who broke into houses for lewd acts often refuse to admit to their crimes of debauchery and instead claim to be mere thieves. It seems the way the world works has changed to the point where it's hard to understand. If there were a fox in today's government offices, it might really speak human language and loudly declare, "I am a thief." Absurd, yet undeniably true. This reminds me of another story. The people of Jiangxiu had to carry the heavy burden of transporting tribute grain every year, along with additional taxes. However, these burdens often weighed much more heavily on the common folk than on the wealthy landowners. The ordinary farmers, with only a few acres of land, tried to reduce their tax payments by registering their land under the names of the wealthy households, effectively becoming their tenants. As a result, while the total amount of taxes collected by the state didn't decrease, local officials found that their share of the cut was significantly reduced. The county magistrate, Zhou, was very unhappy about this situation and petitioned the imperial court to eliminate this loophole, which was granted. At first, the government was lenient, allowing those who had temporarily registered their land under the wealthy households to come forward without punishment. However, it wasn't long before some dishonest rogues saw an opportunity and began exploiting this policy to extort others. Some even claimed land they had sold decades ago as registered land, and turned around to accuse the landowners of stealing their property. Magistrate Zhou sided with these troublemakers, and as a result, many honest and hard-working people lost their land, and some even had their families destroyed. One scholar named Li was taken to court by one of these rogues, a man named Zhang. The two stood in front of the magistrate, and Zhang kept calling Li scholar. Li, however, became furious and sharply retorted, "Me, a scholar? No way." The courtroom was filled with gasps and murmurs. Magistrate Zhou, sensing something odd, turned to his clerks and asked, "Is Li truly a scholar?" They all responded in unison, "He is indeed a scholar." Zhou frowned and said, "Li, if you're a scholar, why don't you admit it?" Li sneered and replied, "Let's put that scholar title aside for now. Once the land issue is settled, I'll consider being a scholar again. But I'd rather not have people think that just because I'm a scholar, I must be well-mannered and easy to take advantage of." This remark caused the people in the courtroom to mutter among themselves, shaking their heads. What a strange world it had become. People were fighting to be thieves, while the identity of a scholar had become a burden. It was utterly ridiculous. But the absurdity didn't end there. A few days later, the county office received an anonymous letter, which read, "The original owner of the land, due to some lawbreakers seizing his property, hereby petitions. Because of my old age and frailty, I am unable to serve in labor, but I still have 50 acres of good land on the outskirts of the city. I entrusted this land to a scholar named Yan Yuan during the spring and autumn period, in the year of Duke Yin of Lu. Now, with the strict laws of the imperial court, I am willing to return the land. However, this villain Yan Yuan, relying on his status as a favored disciple of Confucius, refuses to return it. When I went to demand it back, Confucius himself came with 72 armed men, beat me senseless, broke my limbs, and locked me in a shabby alley, only feeding me a bowl of rice and a ladle of water each day, torturing me to this day. The surrounding villagers can all testify to this. I request that Your Excellency strip Yan Yuan of his title and hold him accountable so that my blood and sweat can return to their rightful owner. After reading the letter, everyone in the courtroom burst into laughter. This wasn't a legal petition at all. It was clearly a sly mockery of Magistrate Zhou. Alright. That's all for today's strange tales, Zhou Kechang and The Thief's Household. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.